Hi everybody, welcome back to a tactics video, this time looking at how to use the Death Korp Engineers. A fantastic new plastic kit released in line with the 10th edition codex, and it's great to see all the Death Korp miniatures now available. So if you're a Death Korp connoisseur, as you know, they were originally available in resin. Now you can get loads of different kits for Death Korp in plastic, so fantastic to see that. Now just like the previous videos, I do a look at how to actually use the unit, and this video is going to be also looking at, is this unit actually a usable unit? Because certainly with their point cost just reduced in September of 2025, potentially there is some play. So let's look at that. Just like my other videos, I always look at how to actually use the unit, how to actually use it on the tabletop, and then of course look at its data sheet to sort of get us a feel for where and what it can do. So let's look at the data sheet quickly to familiarize ourselves with it. So it is 5 or 10 miniatures at 60 or 95 points. And as at the Q3 2025 balanced data slate in September of this year, it went from 70 to 60 points, a bit of a point reduction there. So 60 for 5 or 95 for 10. Now what do you get as far as the core rules are concerned? 6-inch movement, toughness 3, 4+ save, 1 win, leadership 7, and OC of 1. So pretty much completely standard across the board. The 4+ save is the same as the Kazkin and the Scions, so they're a bit more survivable, which makes sense because as per the law, they've got a bit more armor to wear. Now, then as said, you've got 5 or 10 models. And broadly speaking, the way to think about the weapon options is the sergeant can take either an auto pistol or a plasma pistol or a hand flamer. He can then take either a power weapon, a trench club, I believe, or a chain sword, and that's what the sergeant can take. Then if you're taking 5, you can have one guy with a flamer, and you can also then of course have a close combat weapon. Then the remaining, there's one other miniature, he can then take the remote mine, and he has an auto pistol and a close combat weapon, and then the remaining 2 or 7, if you're taking the 10-man blob, can take either auto pistols and a trench club or a combat shotgun. So think about it almost like 3 of them have got special weapons, as in the leader, the sergeant, the flamer man, and then the remote mine dude, and then everybody else has got either a mace, a trench club, and an auto pistol or a combat shotgun. So when you look at the actual weapon profiles, you'll notice that nothing really does much damage besides the plasma pistol, which of course is one shot. The flamer is then of course strength 4, but it's a torrent weapon, and the hand flamer is basically the same thing, but it's strength 3, not strength 4, and it's also a pistol. So if you are in combat and you survive, you can stay in combat and flame the enemy in combat, so that's cool. Now the auto pistol is essentially a las pistol, strength 3, AP 0. And then a combat shotgun essentially is 2 shots at 12 inches at strength 4, AP 0, 1 damage, and it's an assault weapon as well. Now the way to basically think about this is that overall, they don't do much in the shooting phase and much in the combat phase, except for a key rule we'll speak about in a second, 2 key rules. So again, you know, you're going to do a little bit of damage in shooting, a little bit of damage. 2 flamers is going to tickle things. And then in combat, I mean, you're hitting on 4s, make them hit on 3s. You could be wounding stuff with a strength 4, but this is not going to be doing loads of output in the combat phase. Is it going to be doing more than some regular guardsmen? Of course it is. You've got 2 attacks, even with just the standard guys, or 2 attacks with a trench club at strength 4, which makes you as punchy as a space marine. You're hitting on 4s, you don't have loads of attacks, nothing's above strength 4, so you're not going to do loads there. Now abilities. Scout 6. So this unit can scout move 6, just like the Kazkin, just like the Datasheet jungle fighters. So it's great to have another unit which can scout move as well. So a good choice to have in the toolkit. So the 3 scout move ability ones, or 4, is, as said, Kazkin, jungle fighters, scout sentinel, which can scout move 9, and then of course the Kree combat engineers. We've got another option here which is quite good. Then the other key ability is once per turn they can use the grenade stratagem for free, which is fantastic. Now the key thing here is that you can't be using this more than once. You can only use this unit throwing grenade for free. So if you could throw this grenade as top of another stratagem used by a different unit, that'd be absolutely amazing. And I think there's actually some units in the wider 40k universe that can do that, but this unit can only throw the grenade itself, and it's for free, which is fantastic, but no one else can then throw a grenade. So that is the way to think about it potentially with this unit, is that you essentially have theoretically 5 extra CP or 5 free CP over the course of the game, because if this unit survived 5 complete turns and threw 5 grenade stratagems over the course of 5 turns, that's an extra 5 CP. So are they going to last that long? Probably not. If they are, you've done very well in your game. But just think about almost the sense that you're paying 60 points for 5, 95 points for 10, plus you're getting at least, let's agree, 2 CP back in the bank, because you have to pay the CP for the grenade stratagem. Now another key rule is the remote mine. So once per battle, in your shooting phase only, you can select an enemy unit within 9 inches, invisible to the bearer, and on a 3-up, they suffer D3 mortal wounds or 2 D3 mortal wounds if it's a vehicle or fortification. So that is the little remote mine here. Now, if you're looking at the printed codex, this is different. This essentially is a nerfed rule. So in the printed codex, it was within 12 inches. You didn't have to see them, and I believe it was D6 mortal wounds was the minimum you could do. So this is fundamentally a nerf where they've reduced it by 3 to 9. You have to see the target, whereas previously you didn't have to see the target, and 12 inches meant that you could actually scout move them into a terrain piece and be actually getting into your opponent's deployment zone in some deployment maps and doing mortal wounds without actually seeing it, which was amazing. And that actually fair. To be fair to the law, I mean, this thing's meant to be driving through buildings, so why can't it do that? So this is not as good as it used to be. But still, it is outputting mortal wounds. Now, again, thinking of the direct comparison is the Kaz can have a similar rule where they can throw their melter mine. It's got to be within 3 inches, and it can be in the beginning of any phase, versus this can be within 9 inches. Okay, it's got a further range, but it can only be done in your shooting phase. So as per a video I've done previously on the Kazkin, you can do some tricks with when you actually activate the melter mine, but this one is only in a shooting phase. Now the melter mine in the Kazkin goes off on a 2-up. This going off on a 3-up makes this much less reliable. Yeah, it's crazy how just going from a 2 to 3 makes things obviously less reliable, but that really makes this not a guarantee to pop off. 2 D3 mortal wounds or 2 D3 mortal wounds then matches what the Kazkin can do. So yeah, so what have we got? We got fundamentally squishy guardsmen with a 4-up save. You can take squads of 5 or 10. They scout move. They've got little bits of DACA here and there, a little bit of stabbiness in the melee phase. You can do a potentially decent amount of mortal wounds from the free grenade stratagem and the remote mine going off. But then quickly, let's cover off the keywords. So they've got infantry, good. They've got smoke, which means you can actually use the smoke screen stratagem, interesting. They've then of course got the grenade keyword to throw the grenades. Imperium and regiments means that they can be ordered as per voice of the command, and then they benefit from multiple different attachments in the codex. They can then be led by a host of different characters, so some interesting choice options here, but to be pretty honest, you don't really attach this to much in my perspective. There could be some niche use cases, but I mean, across the attachment to a commissar, if you've got 30 points, fine, cool, but would you attach it to these guys? Probably not. Krieg Command Squad, I wouldn't. Lord Solar, absolutely not. Ministorum Priest, they're crap. Primaris Psyker, maybe. And the Tech Priest Engines here is just cute. So 60 points for 5, 95 points for 10. And the key thing is they've got a 25mm base size, which makes them nice and puny, yeah? So again, squishy guardsmen, a comical amount of output in the shooting phase, a little bit of output in the combat phase, three grenades, and once per game D3 mortal wounds or 2D3, and they can scout 6. So let's now go on to the standard format I follow here, which is talking about the negatives, the positives, effective use potentially, and then also optimal configurations in the sense of how it fits into an army list. So what the negatives of this is that they won't survive very long, pretty much like most core guard infantry units. So I've got a 4-up save, cool, as opposed to Battlelord, I've got a 5-up save. Okay, fine, you've got a bit more survivability there, but you've got 5 dudes at toughness 3, 1 wound. They're not going to survive against anything serious, so let's agree on that. Now, as per the point I made on the 3+ to pop the remote mine, you are not guaranteed to do any damage with this. Yeah, so throwing a grenade is 6d6 going off on a 4-up, which is only a 50% chance, of course, across 6 dice. But of course, we've all thrown a grenade and done 2 mortal wounds, 1 mortal wound, or 0. And as said, going to do the remote mod on a 3-up means that it is by no means something you should rely on to go and blow up a tank, for example, because a 3-up is not a 2-up. You definitely always roll a 1 or a 2, and given it's only once per game, then it's obviously over. Now, as said, the shooters and stabbers don't really do much. Yes, you'll do some damage into other guardsmen. Yes, you'll tickle some Kroot. Yes, you'll tickle some cultists. But let's again agree, if you're looking to do high volumes of damage, this unit won't do it with the shooters or stabbers. Now, even at 60 points, which is a point reduction, for 5 models, it still feels a touch too expensive. And in my perspective, 95 points for 10 of them feels even worse. Even though it's a scaled discount, because obviously if you simply go 2 times 60 is 120, they obviously have factored that the fact that the meat of the output is in the 5 models, so bolting on 5 more is just extra bodies, but fundamentally it still feels like a lot of points. Now I'm going to make the point in the later part of the video, but do remember that for 15 points more, 110 points, you get 10 Kazkin who do exceptionally well on the tabletop. They're a very well favoured unit, and that's the point with this is, you know, again, from a competitive landscape point of view, keeping an eye on lists that do well in tournaments, is you don't often see this unit play, which is, again, that's the competitive sweaty scene, but if the super competitive players who do well aren't using him, then it's sort of indicative where they kind of sit, unfortunately. So I think at 60 points is still a bit too expensive. 55 points even would be enough to make him playable, I believe, or even 50 points will make him very playable. And then, of course, they're just OC1. So that will tie into point I'll make in a moment, is that compared to the other options we've got in the Codex, you're kind of wondering with this unit, what does it actually stand for to be, or sort of like, you know, thinking about it that way. So a couple of negatives. I still think it's fundamentally this here, but then I haven't really articulated the point here, but I actually don't know what this unit really does for you. And stick with me as we go through it. So what are the positives though? What are the positives? So firstly, they look amazing, honestly. Here's my Instagram. Very proud of the dudes I painted, but they got the super cool like death masks, because in the lore they're like accepting they're going to die, so they've got the extra armor. You can see on the shin pads and obviously that, and they've got the death masks. And my favorite part has to honestly be the backpacks. The rucksacks look awesome. They've got all like different tools as opposed to engineers for clearing barbed wire, or, you know, whatever that's meant to be. I don't actually know what it is. One's got the blowtorch, the sergeant's got the grenade backpack. So a fantastic unit to play. And one guy's even got an axe, and there's the guy with the remote mine kit, so very cool. Now, the back on point. Now, so being infantry obviously is very beneficial, means you can move freely around the board. As opposed to, say, vehicles or even mounted units like the Rough Riders, is that they can move through terrain freely, so that is helpful. Now, as they've got multiple keywords, so having smoke is interesting. The other unit which I can think of which has got smoke for infantry is actually the Tempestus Aquilans, which is interesting. So that could make them potentially more survivable, because then popping smoke means you're -1 to hit, and then you've got the benefits of cover as well. So that could make it more survivable, albeit it's only 5 dudes. Of course, I've got the grenades for the Grey Stratagem. And having regiment is very important, because then you can benefit multiple detachments which require that keyword, and of course the army roll. This is directly comparing to, say, Ratlings, Bolgrams and Ogrins, who lack that keyword and then can't benefit from the army roll and most of the detachments. Now, having Scout 6 is always very helpful. You know, if you go first, it allows you to be more aggressive. If you go second and you've got them in an aggressive position, you can move them back behind cover. So having Scout is always good to have. As said, you've got now 4 options: Scout Sentinels, Jungle Fighters, Kazkin, also, and the Death Korp Engineers. Of course, if you put any of those in a vehicle, in a transport, dedicated transport, that can then Scout move the transport as well. So potentially something there. So it is very helpful. Now, whilst I said they're not guaranteed to do much damage, which is definitely the case, they've got massive potential to trade up in damage. So, you know, let's pretend you get super lucky. You know, you throw a grenade into a vehicle, you then do the remote mine, goes off, 2d3, let's call it 4 wounds, let's call it, say, 4 damage, and then you get, let's pretend, 4 mortal wounds from your grenade. You've just done a whopping big 8 damage into a vehicle, and that will put a lot of vehicles below half and mean they're less accurate or lose OC. So, and likewise, you could go and clear a bunch of relatively tough opponents, tough models, because, you know, even if you went off and did it into, say, some Adeptus Custodes Guardians, I don't know how much they cost, but they're probably like 55, 60 points each. If you kill 2 of them, that's 100 points. And trade up, if you're trying to be more competitive, is the sense of 60 points kills off 100 points, 120 points, etc. So they have got the potential to actually do a lot of damage versus their point cost, yeah? Now, having 2 flamers also means it allows for acute overwatch threat. Yeah? Again, strength 3, strength 4. It's basically the same as the jungle fighters with their 2 flamers. Obviously, one is strength 4, one is strength 3, but still, it's enough to actually make using the Overwatch stratagem potentially something to think about. Now, again, just like the jungle fighters, is that where Overwatch always works quite nicely into infantry or non-monsters and vehicle targets, as in combined arms, is where you get the lethal hits on 6s. So, you know, if you've got your combat shotgun guys, you've got 2 of them, that's 4 shots. You guy with the pistol and the remote mine pack, and then you've got 2 flamers. You know, actually Overwatch potentially combined arm has got potential play, albeit Overwatch isn't always something you should be throwing around. Now, as said, essentially this is at least 1 free CP per game. So make sure you actually can use your grenade stratagem for free. Make sure you actually are popping the remote mine, because something you want to do is get these guys out and they die, and before they can even do all the super cool remote mine stuff. Now that will get us into, and I'm going to get onto this point before I actually show the next, because it gets a bit negative, is that you know, how you actually deploy this unit's important, because if you bring them in from reserves and they're going to be outside of 9 inches, you then actually can't throw because you have to be within 9 to use the remote mine, and given the grenade stratagem have to be within 8 inches. If you bring it in from reserves in the intention to do something against your opponent, you can't, of course, throw a grenade or use the remote mine. So it means you have to either bring them in from a rapid ingress and move next turn, or have them positioned in deployment to take advantage of that rule. With that all being said, let's now look at effective use, and this is what, again, what are they doing for you in the game? And this, for me personally, despite painting 5, which I want to use, I'm not sure what they actually do. Now, are they an early skirmish piece? And skirmishing can be achieved in both destroying your enemy units that are playing an early skirmish game, like turns 1 and 2. You could be turning off objectives, or you can be movement blocking. And in that case, are you better just using some jungle fighters? Yeah, because they're 65 points. You've got 10 bodies as opposed to 5, and you've got 10 bodies at OC2 versus OC1 on 5 guys. So are you better off just using jungle fighters if you want to do a skirmish game? Or even if you want to do an aggressive skirmish game, use Kazkin, albeit it's 110 versus 60. You know, like, what are you actually going to use them for? Now, are you going to be using them to apply damage? So I said they can definitely do damage, but if you want to be, you know, doing that, just use Kazkin potentially, because they're fundamentally way more reliable. They've got more output. They've got 2 melters potentially. They've got 2 hotshot volley guns. They've got 2 plasma plus a plasma pistol, if you take it that way, plus a sniper rifle. So they're going to do more damage. But that being said, 60 points versus 110 certainly, obviously, is a big difference. And if you want to use them as an early screen with a scout move, then just use jungle fighters. So again, this is for me where I'm not sure what they really do for you in a list. And if you know and have had good experience, please tell me, because I want to know, I want to learn from you. But this for me really is where I'm just not clear on what their role is, because it's almost like, given the mortal wounds aren't as guaranteed and don't do more mortal wounds than, say, the Kazkin, I'm just not clear what they actually perform for you. Now, that always been said, the last point is that if you just want them as a cheap way to do a ton of potential mortal wounds, that's fine. If you've got 60 points left in your list after you've built a 2,000 point list, you've got 60 points left over, then of course this is a unit you potentially could use, because, you know, I don't think, and this gets into optimal configurations in a moment, is it's not like you would build a list around this unit and go, I'm going to have 3 squads of 10 dudes who can throw grenades and go about playing the game. Personally, I haven't seen that being done. I haven't heard anybody do it, but if you've seen it or done it, please tell me. And maybe a way to actually make them sort of stick around a bit longer is, yes, you come out, you do your mortal wounds, you pop your remote mine, you shoot some shotguns and some flamers, throw a grenade and kill off a unit. and then because you're in the open, you use a smoke stratagem next turn to make yourself a bit more survivable. Maybe that's a play. So again, if you've used them, you've had good use out of them, let me know, because I want to know, because I can therefore use my 5 dudes. So as far as configuration is concerned, I believe, this is me, that the 5-man is the main way to field them. I don't see the point in taking 10, because you can get 10 Kazkin for 15 more points at 110 points versus 95 for 10 of these dudes. And as I said, if you want to go about the scout move potentially, you get 10 jungle fighters for 65 points. You get essentially double the amount of miniatures, albeit they do less, potentially jungle fighters versus Death Korp Engineers, but for the same roughish points. Now, personally, if you are going to, well, if you take an extra 2, or if you're taking, an extra 7 dudes, or if you're taking 10, is that I probably would stick to shotguns. I mean, trench clubs look very cool, honestly look very, very nice. But being realistic, most guard units, with a couple of key exceptions, are not about doing much in the combat phase, the melee phase. So I kind of always think it's like, don't try and pretend to be something you're not, in the sense of what your units are. Like, again, like trying to play, even jungle fighters, like with their rule, like really, are they going to do much in combat? Okay, yes, they're going to do a little bit if they got charged, but that's my perspective is, if you're going to outfit the other guys, just give them more shotguns. But the reality is actually, it doesn't actually really matter, because where you're going to do most of your damage is in the grenade strat, and then of course also the remote mine. Now, as to the sergeant, he can actually, as I've just checked, take a auto pistol, a bolt pistol, a hand flamer, I believe, yes, or a plasma pistol. Now, you could argue and say take a plasma pistol, but personally, I just always stick to the hand flamer, because, I mean, then you've got a guaranteed chance of hitting something, because it's obviously torrent, versus you actually got to hit the thing in the first place, albeit it's obviously a lot stronger. So I would say broadly, with the actual weapons you take, just take whatever you think looks cool or actually works. But personally, I would go hand flamer on the sergeant with, of course, a power weapon, and then all the additional guys with a combat shotgun. Of course, I've also got assault, which means you can advance and shoot, but yeah, fine. Lastly, and this is probably the point I just made, is that I don't really see this as a unit you'd build an army list around, although they pretty much benefit from every single detachment rule. So if we just sort of list them off, combined arms, they've got lethal hits, bridgehead strike, they are infantry, they get raw ones to hit. Mechanized assault, they're infantry, they can disembark and do some extra damage on their flamers. Cool. I'm going to forget the rest and embarrass myself. Siege benefits most units. And then, of course, Hammer of the Emperor, which is looking after tanks. Not much infantry benefits from that, but of course you can drive your transports through walls. So that's what I think. I think that if you've got 60 points spare, fine. They're gonna give you essentially, as I said, maybe 1 or 2 free CP per game, because you can throw a grenade for free twice, maybe, or maybe 3 times if you're lucky. But still, I think I'm just not sure what they do. Yeah, I don't know how they fit into the equation. Obviously, with mortal wounds being their key thing, it's then like mortal wounds don't get any better in any of the detachment rules we've got, yeah, if that makes sense, because Kazkin can be made to be very good, an example, from combined arms with lethal hits, or bridgehead strike, which has got a couple of key stratagems. Even mechanized, because when they get out, they can be super nasty on their shooting with a +1 to win a mechanized assault. But again, given this unit's about mortal wounds, nothing in the codex makes mortal wounds better, obviously, because it's mortal wounds. So what do you think? Let me know your perspective. As I said, if you had a better sort of experience than I have. And again, they're not a horrible unit, they're not terrible, they're not trash, but I just don't know, and I'm struggling to kind of work it out. But again, if I've triggered any thought with yourself, if you've got ideas how to actually effectively use them, let me know, because I'd love to hear from you. So likewise, if I've made any mistakes, missed anything, let me know as well, because I do slip up. But fundamentally, this is about how it's helping you sort of think about this unit a bit differently. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video and want to support me, you can do so with a like, comment, or by subscribing. Joining my Platoon platoon, where you receive a miniature at the end of each roll call, at the end of all videos, or becoming a channel member. You can also buy some channel dice I've got flashed up here. I had them custom made by the amazing people Dice Baron in the USA with some very beautiful camouflage scheme and of course my channel logo. So check the description below if you want to buy those, and massive thanks to all my subscribers, Patreons and wider supporters. So get your bayonet sharp, let's gun oiled. Faith for the Emperor strong. Patron Platoon, sound off. Tank Commander Glenn. Tank Commander Mitchell. Tank Commander Watchdog Van Etten. Lieutenant Burke Nielsen. Lieutenant Smith. Colour Sergeant DuPont. Sergeants Adal, Scott, to Colonel Merrill. Veterans Gibson, Hall, Lundeen. Guardsman Beard, Coquelin, Easingwood, Hills, Lyons, Malik, Nitton, Medicae Rolfe, Tontkin. Conscripts England, Evangan, Goodwin. Honorary Members Bolgram King, Syker Smith, Cyan Gaylard, Aquilon Nassine.